Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Emotional Mastery with Rochelle, the podcast where we talk about all things emotional, spiritual, mental, physical healing. The biggest lesson in my life has been emotional regulation, which has been the hardest thing in my life. And so that's where this podcast comes from, emotional regulation. It's really to talk about all the tools, tips, tricks, everything that I have discovered on this 6-3 emotional manifesting generator, Taurus Sun, Leo Moon, Leo Rising journey of mine. Since I've trialed and errored most of it, just everything I've learned along this way in the hopes that something will resonate, something will land, something will help you, something that I've experimented with and tried. So it's really just to share all of that and to bring on some incredibly expanding guests that just share their experiences and how they got from, point A to point B and in their healing journey. So this episode is all about a shamanic healing that I had done in May. And I had recorded this episode I think I had recorded it in August because I was coming up to my 3-month mark. And when I had the shamanic healing, she had told me that there would be transformation shifts that would happen 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months from the time of the shamanic healing. So this and I've talked about the shamanic healing on Instagram, and I actually really just talked about it to somebody the other day. And it kind of works out perfect because I'm fighting a cold right now. I've been overworking myself because, of course, it's Scorpio season. So why not? I've been keeping busy. And in that, I've realized there's a lot of stuff that I have not really paid attention to within myself, right? My emotions, things that I've kind of just been like working through, like literally working, keeping busy, staying busy through. And so this cold finally caught up to me. So it's really forcing me to stay still and relax. So this works out. And again, it was something that came up recently. And I just did the whole episode on shadow work. And I think it was really this beginning of the shadow work that I had in March that was really, really deep. That kind of brought me when I went to Mexico and I saw the shamanic healing. It was a thing that like kind of scared me, but I knew that I wanted to do. So this shamanic healing literally has like shifted so much in my life. And it felt really timely and important to talk about it. I really dive into exactly what I experienced during the shamanic healing and kind of the shifts that have happened since then, because they've been huge and they've been many. And so we're about, I think, like a week into Scorpio season. So I hope you all are hanging in there. I hope you're staying grounded. If you have any stories that you want to tell me or anything you want to share about Scorpio season, maybe any tips, tricks, tools, I'll probably put a post on Instagram. Even if you just DM me, I will share it because I think it's so important to support each other within this phase. And my son, who you can hear in the background, I apologize. I'm trying to do this on a Saturday when I have a little bit of time, but I usually record after they go to bed. But my son is a Scorpio rising. And so Scorpio risings have a lot of karma to begin with because it is in your first house of self, right? That's where your rising sign is in astrology. And he's also got Mars in Scorpio. So he's going through it. There's a lot of he's 5. So there's just a lot of anger stuff. He's feeling, I don't even know the word. But yeah, he's just feeling it. So that's kind of what's going on here. I just read the book, What Are You Doing With Your Life? I will link it in the show notes. It was really, really, really good. I also recorded an interview with Alexandra Beebe Shelley at Dog Eared Book Club. She is such a beautiful soul. I will also link her stuff in the show notes. Go follow her on Instagram if you love books, if you love reading. The way she just describes books and describes her inner world is just so beautiful. And we dive in a little bit into human design, and she's inner vision is her cognition. So it just makes so much sense that she can be so descriptive in the wording. And it was just such a beautiful conversation. We talked about meditation. We talked about manifestation. We talked about, not meditation. We talked about manifestation. We talked about mediumship. We talked about books, of course, and so much more. So that episode is going to be coming out next week. I can't wait for you guys to hear that. Like I said, it was such a pleasure to talk to her. She's just such a beautiful soul. So I can't wait for you to hear that one episode. And in it, she had recommended this book called Oneness, and I will link it in the show notes as well. And I started reading it last night, and I'm only 2 chapters in, but wow. I have highlighted so many things in the 2 chapters. I've dog-eared half the 2 chapters. It is such an impactful already book. It's really talking about, it's a channeled message from oneness, right? Which is whatever term you want, God, source, oneness, love, the universe. We are all one. And it's really talking about how we can achieve that sense of oneness and within ourselves. And one thing that I just literally read this morning that I've been carrying with me since then is just this idea that
where we're at right now, right? Our emotions, what we're experiencing. A lot of times we push it down, we shove it down, we don't want to feel it. But in allowing ourselves to feel it, we're actually bringing ourselves closer to our higher self, right? We're kind of reaching up to our higher self. And when we don't allow ourselves to feel that, and it becomes bigger, and that shadow, right, becomes bigger, and the energy, it gets lower vibration because we're not facing it, we're not seeing it. And our higher self almost can't come down to that vibrational level because our higher self is our higher self, right? But in the book, she talks about how when we're in that stage, when we don't allow ourselves to process, there is a version of ourselves that is reaching towards us, where we're at right now, to heal and to grow. And it was such a beautiful passage. I'm actually going to grab the book right now and read it to you, because the way I'm describing it doesn't even come close to the impact of the actual words. It's beautifully written. Again, only 2 chapters in, I can tell this book is going to be one of those mind-shifting, life-changing books. So I'm going to grab it and read this little section for you. Okay, so these are the passages that I highlighted. Until you are able to liberate yourself vibrationally from the chronic patterns of response that keep you stuck in endless repetitions of the same old song, your higher aspect of self is unable to integrate you without jeopardizing its own vibrational levels. That was really powerful for me. And then it says, she continues on, and then it says, consider the very real possibility that what links energetically to you in these moments are aspects of your own being who have been excluded from you and who seek to integrate with you in their journey towards oneness. And I thought that was so, so profound and beautiful, because I've never thought in those moments of pain and sorrow and suffering that there was a version of me that was reaching towards where I'm at right now. And it goes on, from their perspective, you are the heightened state of beingness toward which they strive. You are the mastery they seek. You are the enlightened perspective that they have tasted fleetingly and with which they yearn to bond at the deepest heart level. Your own emotional responses to given situations in your life open the doors to parallel scenarios with parallel energetic triggers at other levels of creation. The common ground and the paths upon which you will merge energetically with all aspects of self are the emotions you share at the deepest level. It is imperative that you open your heart to the very real sensations of hurt, sorrow, or outrage summoned to you by circumstances in the dramas in which you play a part. And in the beginning of the book, she talks about how if you are at a point where you're reading this and you are resonating with this and you are working to integrate this, you are at a part, you are in the phase in your, whether you believe in reincarnations, whatever it is, like you are at the phase where this is true for you, right? You're at the phase where you have the awareness, your soul, your spirit, your higher self is at a level where it can actually take these teachings and integrate them. And I thought that was really, really unique and really powerful. So if you're listening to this and those passages really resonated with you, know that you're in a space that you're open enough to receive that message, and it will penetrate your soul, right? Like it will integrate and it will allow you to grow and heal and work towards and reach towards this higher self. But I just thought that was so beautiful, because a lot of times when we're sitting in that pain and that suffering and that sorrow and the outrage and anger, like she said, like when we're sitting in that, we often just feel like we have taken 10 steps back and we're not really working towards healing. I mean, at least I speak for myself, right? Like I know there are moments when I'm sitting in that very real pain and I just want it to stop, because it makes me feel like I'm not at a certain spiritual level, which is bullshit, because we're all working towards it, right? And even through those feelings and those pains, and maybe I do something that was an old pattern, the awareness that I'm doing it as an old pattern is key in itself. But also I'm doing it in a space where my awareness level is at a different space where it was when I originally had started those toxic patterns, right? So there is a level of coming at it, even if I'm going back to the space of comfort, I'm going there with awareness. And maybe next time I get there, I will actually fully heal. So I just wanted to share that, because again, 2 chapters in, blown away already by the book. Going to link it in the show notes. Grab it, because if you're in this space of healing, if you're in this space in your spiritual journey, this book, just so far, I can tell it's going to be one of those books that is just completely mindset shifting. So without further ado, I'm not going to take up too much time on here in the introduction. I will let the episode speak for itself. One of the most powerful experiences ever. If you have a chance to go to Mexico, if you've been to Mexico, whatever, even if you find a shaman next door, wherever you're at, it was such an amazing, incredible, life-changing experience for me personally in my life. And, on this journey, we're all finding the tools to further ourselves, to better ourselves, to work with ourselves and our emotions. The reason this podcast is called Emotional Mastery is like, it's not so much to sit here and be like, oh, I'm a master of my emotions. No, but our emotions, our mind gets in the way, right? And our emotions are literally like our GPS. Our emotions are the thing that can tell us what's right for us and what's not. But so often we get caught up in this ego and this mind game of like, oh, well, that's not what society says. That's not the way. your mind is basically your conditioning, right? Telling you that what you feel is wrong, or other people have told you what you feel is wrong. So it's really just like, let's master our emotions and let's allow them to be the master, right? Like, let's allow them to be our guidance system without allowing them to overpower us. And that just means having the tools that when you are in a heightened state of emotions, often there's a sense of confusion there. Often that's because your mind has played on it. But we also need to feel our emotions fully to process them and move on from them and learn the lesson that we need to learn from them. So with all that being said, I am so grateful for you all. Please, I would love if you could rate, review, subscribe, share with a friend, tag me on Instagram, share the episode on Instagram, because the more ears that this gets to, the more people that listen, the more the podcast can be put out there, the more guests I can get on for you guys, and just continue to bring this to you, because this is such a passion of mine. I love being able to share everything on here. And I truly believe that everything that comes through this episode is just channel messages and exactly what's supposed to come through when it's supposed to come through. So be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Love you all. And here is the episode.
So this specific episode, I'm actually coming up to 3 months since this shamanic healing that I did for my birthday in May. And I did it on my birthday, May 15th. And it had this integration period that I would feel the effects, or things would manifest or clear out 3 days after, 3 weeks after, and 3 months after. So I'm coming close. I'm 2 days away from 3 months after now. So I kind of wanted to talk about the actual healing, not ceremony, the actual healing itself. And then just kind of the things that happened in those time points. So the actual healing itself was incredible. I was actually quite anxious because I don't want to control things, but in my own way, I kind of do. And I think the idea, like so many of us, the idea of losing control and not being in control is kind of scary. And so because I had never experienced anything like this, I really had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if this was going to be like an out of body experience. I didn't know if I was going to see visions. I had no idea. Of course, the universe doesn't give us anything that we can't handle, or, it doesn't align us with anything that we're not at that level of, right? And so because on my spiritual journey, I have the deep belief, but I'm not at the point of that level of seeing things or feeling things or experiencing things. I experienced things that I hadn't experienced before, but it wasn't like an out of body experience or anything like that. So I got in and I, met the shaman. She pulled out all of her tools and explained that I literally had to do nothing. I just laid there, whatever was comfortable for me. I could keep my eyes closed, keep my eyes open. Like really, they just prefer that you lay down. But if you feel uncomfortable or want to do something else, it really was very intuitive practice. I could be and do basically what I wanted. She said there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe she probably sensed that from me, but she started the ceremony just invoking her guides, spirits. And when we do this kind of healing, it's very, the quantum field, right? We know that everything is happening right now, right? The things that you're thinking about that happened yesterday actually happened in the moment, right? So, and you're re-experiencing them in the now moment, right? They happen now when they happened, you're re-experiencing them in your mind now. So it's all happening now, right? Things that the quantum field is now. So she explained to me that she was going to go into the quantum field basically and just access anybody that was going to come forward and help with this. If there was any spirit animals that were going to come forward for me, if there's any ancestors that were going to come forward for me, any memories that were going to come forward, anything like that, she was going to share, just access, tap into, share. And all I had to do was lay there basically. So she did the whole thing. She started and she had this rattle. And she was walking around me, calling in the spirits and the winds and the everything like that. And I was like I said, I was pretty anxious just because I had no idea what I was going to experience. And so she was doing the rattle around me and she came up to my right ear. And my right ear not often, but every now and again, I'll get like this pain in it. And it's more from my jaw. It's not necessarily an ear infection, but it's from my jaw. And so she came next to that specific ear that I think I had just experienced something within that week. I had an earache. So she brought the rattle really close to my ear and it was really, really loud to the point where I almost wanted to like cover the other ear or cover the ear in general. And so she kept doing it. It was really, really loud. And then she covered my other ear. So all I could hear was this rattle. And it was very uncomfortable. It was not painful, but it was uncomfortable to sit with this right in my ear for what felt like a while, but really was probably like 30 seconds or less. And then she dropped the rattle and covered both of my ears. And I have a defined ajna. And so it's very hard to stop my mind. And I don't think I've ever experienced that before. I've never experienced complete stillness. I've had moments of it. I had pockets. I've had a few seconds here and there during meditations, but I've never had a full on, like, not a thing going on in my mind. And so she dropped the rattle, she covered both my ears, and it was just like silence. And I was so aware of that moment. I heard the birds, I heard the wind, I heard the trees, and I knew it all was talking to me. I knew it all was for me in that moment. And I knew I was just so present with it. I didn't have a thought about what's happening tomorrow. I didn't have a thought about, what happened last year. There was nothing in my mind other than that exact moment, how I felt listening to the bugs and the birds and all that stuff. So it was really, really beautiful experience. And she continued to go on, and she had a memory that came up afterwards. We sat and talked, and she asked me if I painted or if I was an artist. And I said that I was a photographer, but I wasn't like an actual painter. And she said she saw this little girl and she wanted to paint, but her mother told her, you can't do that. You have to set the table. And so the girl put the painting aside and went and set the table and just never really went back to it. So she went and she had rewired this memory within me to be that the girl was allowed to paint, was allowed to do her art. And so she suggested, she was like, if you don't paint, I suggest that you start, which this is probably the reason why I decided to do this right now, so that I can tap into that, because I completely never went and painted. But yeah, so she had told me that, and she told me that I need to let go. I need to let go of her. She said, as she was doing this, it was very loud and it was very repetitive. It was on repeat. And it was just saying, when I let go of control, things flow with ease. When I let go of control, things flow with ease. And so she just like kept saying this. And it was just really interesting because this idea of control and letting go of it and things flowing had come up for me a few times prior to this session. So literally verbatim of what she had said. So that was really cool, that those specific words. And so I've been journaling those morning and night. And she said to do that for 3 months. So I've been doing that morning and night. And she said, when I was towards the end of the session, I saw like when you close your eyes and there's a light in front of you, you usually see like warm reds and yellows and stuff like that. Right. Fine. And I was starting to see these intense colors, and all of a sudden it just turned to this bright, vibrant purple, was just all over my vision. And it looked like a spider web. It was just like this web all over the place. And it kept shifting and forming and moving and everything. And after she said, when she had, cleared everything out, done all the reprogramming, everything that she needed to do, she asked her guides if there was anything else. And she said this black widow spider got up on my chest and started wrapping me up. And so she did her thing and it released. And that's like literally what I saw. I didn't see a spider, but I saw the webbing. And so that was really cool to have that experience. And then she said that there was 2 squirrels that went up on my feet. And so we looked up, what squirrels meant and all this stuff, but it was just a really, really cool experience. And I've done so much unpacking since then. It was like the 3-day mark was, I believe after that was the day I came home from Mexico. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It was the day I came home from Mexico. And it was like this, when you have like an incredible trip, you're kind of taken away. You don't care about all of your responsibilities. You don't care about all your obligations. You don't care about your job. Like none of it's just like there, right? You just have this really incredible trip, really incredible experience. And sometimes when you come back, it's like the reality hits and you're just kind of like hit this funk, right? Because it's like, I just had this incredible experience and now I'm like, bleh. And I got back expecting that almost, and it didn't happen. It never happened. Like it was like my perspective has shifted so much that I was able to see things from such a different lens, such a different perspective. And so that was what I felt was the big thing that happened within those first 3 days. I don't specifically remember what happened at the 3-week point, but since then, within the past 3 months, and this week now being this 3-month, has been super intense in a way that it hasn't been before. And I stopped drinking July, first weekend of July 4th weekend. I stopped drinking July 3rd. And that's something that I had been wanting to do for quite some time. And I never did. I just kind of was like, always like, oh, well, tomorrow, whatever. And so I think like this clearing out of all of this stuff really helped allow me to stick with that. Really kind of made me almost like an aversion to it. Or, when you're doing something like I used to smoke and I quit 8 years ago, but it got to the point where I just didn't enjoy it anymore. It didn't feel good anymore, but I was doing it out of habit. I was doing it because, as an anxious person, as somebody with social anxiety, like you always met people when you were the smoker, right? You met all the other smokers. So you kind of like always were guaranteed to have friends because you would just like pop outside and like every other smoker was out there. And it was just like a haha, like whatever, you made friends that way. So, but it got to the point where I just didn't feel good anymore. And it was kind of getting to the same thing with alcohol. And so I think all this clearing out and unblocking and everything really helped me get to the point where I was just like, I'm done. So was another thing. And I've just really kind of come into this like manifestation work recently, really deep diving into it, really deep diving into unblocking shadows, just kind of pulling out all this stuff. And I did a rite of the womb ceremony on Sunday, which was also the new moon and Lionsgate portal and 8/8. So it was just like a lot all in one. So this week's been pretty intense emotionally. So I've really, really been coming back to my practices, coming back to my meditation, making sure I'm doing yoga, making sure I'm drinking enough water, like all of these tools that I have in place. And just not drinking during times like this is so helpful, because before what would happen is I would get like into my spiritual practice. I would do all these things. I would do my meditations. I would do my journaling and do all these things that I knew would help me. But then, Friday night or whatever, I would go out and I would have a few drinks, and then I would wake up in the morning too late because I was just sluggish, right? Because alcohol does that to your body. And I think in hindsight, my body was always sensitive to that, but I just never really, I think because it was just such a social thing and just something that I always did, I didn't really tie together the way I felt with alcohol. But yeah, I would wake up and I just wouldn't feel like journaling, or I would have a drink before I meditated so that I didn't want to come home and meditate. So it was just like, now it's really allowed me to like get very serious with all my spiritual practice and my tools. And so every time I've been hitting lows, they haven't felt that low. Yesterday was probably the lowest I've felt, but that was for a reason. It was because there was one situation in my life that I feel like needed to come to an end, or needed like some boundaries there, that just I wasn't getting my needs met, and it was making me feel constantly rejected. And so I knew that would be hard. So I definitely hit a low yesterday, and I'm kind of holding on to the remnants of that today, but I just keep telling myself, if it's meant for me, it won't miss me. And that I am manifesting everything. I have my lists. I have my manifestation lists, and I have faith that the universe will provide and has the universe has a purpose, or what's meant for me won't miss me. So I truly believe that. I truly believe that. I think that when it comes to this work, especially like this really deep, intense work, there is an element of like, you do need to have faith in something, right? Something, whatever it is, to really get you through sometimes, because there are moments where we hit these points, but maybe you call rock bottoms. And for me personally, I feel like, that's the other thing. In the last month, I have had most of my income sources taken away. And so normally I should, quote unquote, I do air quotes, I should be spiraling, right? Don't get me wrong. I am slightly stressed, but I also just believe that it's clearing space for the things that I actually really want to come through, because I have been filling that space with things, and I've learned lessons in every single one of the things. I've learned tools and skills in every single thing that I've been doing. And I've learned so much about myself in the process. And when I look back on like the last year and a half too, I've learned so much. And in the situation that I ended / set boundaries on, I'm just like so appreciative of every single lesson that I learned, because they were massive. They were massive lessons. They showed me that I was safe to be myself. There was a lot there. But I was literally just in meditation, reflecting on everything that's happened in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And it just like hit me that my 3-month mark is coming up. And so I feel like this is probably the last of the clearing out cycle of everything that isn't serving me, that this healing was removing from my life. And so now that I remember the painting, I will maybe start painting now that it's coming up to the 3-month mark. I do believe that everything happens when it's meant to happen. I think this healing work isn't easy. And I think when you come into it, there is a lot of isolation in that. There is a lot of aloneness in that, because there is a lot of growth and healing. And it's kind of twofold, because I think we have to realize the space that we're coming from and the space that we're coming to. And it's like in between that is this loneliness, but we can also create this community. We can create a support base. And I think that's part of it, right? Is that we know where we were coming from. We know where we're going, but a lot of the people or a lot of situations from where we were coming from no longer serve who we're becoming. And so we have to set boundaries. And a lot of people don't like boundaries when it comes to unhealthy situations, right? Unhealthy relationships where people don't necessarily, they see you in a certain way. And then all of a sudden you're shifting and changing. And that's really hard to accept, because then people can perceive it as being selfish. I've gotten that a lot, where it's like, I was made to think I was selfish before. I was realizing this in one of my meditations the other day, that I was made to feel like I was selfish for having things or for wanting material things. And then I was made to feel selfish, the other not having them or for wanting them or whatever. So I think just that's part of it, right? Is where it's going to be projected on us that we're selfish in this. And in a sense you are, right? Because you're taking care of yourself. So that could be perceived as selfish because you're putting your needs before others. But especially as women, especially as mothers, we're so often like taught to put others' needs before ours. So when we actually kind of set boundaries there and put our own self, right, are important. And especially if you have children, it is so important to have self-care, to show, because kids learn more from what you do than what you say. And so if you are modeling self-care, if you are modeling healthy boundaries, if you are modeling all of these things that you probably didn't get as a child, you're showing your children that those things are healthy, and you're modeling that behavior for them. So it's really, really good thing to have these in place. Like I'd say I'm a recovering people pleaser. Like I still struggle with boundaries. I still struggle with emotional issues, but I like from where I am now, from where I was before, it's just like incredible. I feel like I know now, like on a deep subconscious level, like I know I'm safe to use my voice. There are certain situations, there are certain people that I have not yet set those boundaries with, because it's hard and it's scary and it's coming, but I still get triggered in those situations, but not in the way that I used to. I used to get triggered and I would either just get really, really defensive and in an argument or whatever, which occasionally happens, but I can also have this higher perspective now of like seeing their pain and their wounding and their projections. And so it's a matter of not taking it personally anymore, which is a huge step. So if you have similar situations, maybe like lifelong friends or family that you're really struggling with having boundaries with, like know that it's all a lesson, right? Like at every step of the way, you're going to have lessons. And when you are prepared and when you are ready and when you've learned the lessons that you need to learn to put in place those boundaries, you will. In the meantime, my opinion is perfectly fine to just set energetic boundaries with people, especially people who don't respect your boundaries. Like if you set boundaries and they don't listen to them over and over and over and over again, then energetic boundaries sometimes are the best things to do. And that means not seeing that person, not answering the phone. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like, is that ghosting then? But I think if you try and put boundaries forward and they're not respected, then setting those energetic boundaries are fine. And sometimes that's the only way. I think as long as your intent isn't just to avoid the uncomfortability of setting boundaries and avoid the uncomfortability or the discomfort of having those conversations, then I think you need to do sometimes what is safe, what feels safe and healing and healthy for you. But eventually the conversations are going to come up. And like I said, I think you learn something every single step of the way. Like I used to really get down on myself, like I haven't learned any lessons, or it's like keep repeating the same thing. But now I have the awareness of what I'm doing. And then, what I think you don't realize is that with that awareness, you may be repeating the same habits, you may be repeating the same patterns and cycles, but with that awareness, I think it gets less and less every single time. I think it gets easier to communicate every single time. And I think there's going to be a point where if you continue to do the work and you continue to ask the hard questions, you continue to really dig into why you're doing these things, why these are on repeat. I think once you are continue to do that, at some point, you're going to stop being triggered by it and you're going to stop repeating those patterns. So although it can feel really frustrating, it's like a specific pattern. Like for me, especially when it comes to relationships, like I feel I always choose emotionally unavailable men, always, because my childhood was what I was modeled from emotionally unavailable role models, right? So I didn't know how to regulate my own emotions. And so when I look at that situation too, especially like repeating these patterns and these cycles, it's like I'm attracting these emotionally unavailable people. But then on the flip side, I have to ask, am I being emotionally available, right? Because our relationships are very challenging, or let me rephrase, the challenging relationships we have are some of the biggest lessons we have. Our relationships are mirrors for us, right? So when we're in these challenging and difficult and uncomfortable relationships, sometimes those are the biggest lessons. Those are the biggest lessons that are going to help us move us forward, right? That are going to help us grow and heal. And sometimes and if we don't learn the lesson, we're going to keep repeating those relationships until we do learn the lesson. Of course, there's pain and there's suffering within that. If we allow that to be our reality, I guess. It's not an easy thing to break, obviously. But like I said, I think with when you have the awareness, when you start doing the work and you start realizing the things that are coming up every single time, that awareness is so crucial and so helpful that although, yes, maybe I'm still repeating some of my patterns, I have the awareness to know why I'm doing it. I have the awareness to know the tools to emotionally regulate and set boundaries within those relationships, even if I'm not completely stopping them. And every single cycle of that, I learn a little bit more and I grow a little bit more, because it really is hard to completely unwind all of these like deep-rooted subconscious beliefs, right? These deep-rooted beliefs of worthiness or unworthiness, or lovability or unlovability, and the messages that we received. And they go back for years, right? Like, 0 to 3 is when toxic shame is instilled in us, right? So if you're dealing with like intense toxic shame as an adult, that was put in place between 0 and 3 years. Like when I first heard that, it blew my mind. That, especially as a parent, I think was so overwhelming and so like, oh my gosh, like I may have inadvertently instilled toxic shame in my kids, right? But the thing too is I think our parents did the best they could with what they had. Now it's not to make excuses for any bad behavior. It's not to make excuses for abuse. It's not to make excuses for anything, but they did the best they could with what they had. And especially without awareness and without like the want to grow and heal and all those things, that's what they had. This was just a bit of a reflection from the past 3 months and all the healing that I've done. Like I said, coming up to this 3-month mark in a couple days, I'm just like almost in awe of myself, of all of the massive shifts and unearthing and pivots and growth and healing. And although this past week has felt really emotional and really hard, like I said, I have all of these tools that I can go back to, and I'm adding in new tools, right? Like, what do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher will come. And I truly, truly believe that, right? And it doesn't have to be a physical in your life, like tangible teacher. Like in the past, let's say since COVID, One teacher that came into my life through a friend was Master Co for pranic healing. Never met him in my life, have never actually had a one-on-one communication, but he has been one of the biggest teachers of my life in just like my meditation practice, in healing, in giving, and just incredible, incredible teacher. And I feel like this current phase right now, one of my teachers that has kind of come back in, I feel like I'm learning a lot from, is Lacey Phillips from To Be Magnetic for manifestation and doing these DIs and uncovering all of these things. And so it really is true. I think when you're ready for something, it's going to come into your life, because I joined the membership a couple years ago and I was just not consistent. I didn't do it. And so I dropped it. I was like, whatever, not for me. And then I just kept getting this ping, right? I kind of kept getting this pull to come back to it. And I did. And it feels so expansive this time around. It feels so aligned. And I think I'm just energetically ready for it. I think I'm at the place where this work now is going to be really beneficial for me in combination with all the other things that I'm doing. But that is what I have for you for this week. I think this podcast has been, I know I took like a big break from it for March, April, May, June, July, like 3 months. And so I came back with the intention of putting out one every 2 weeks to give myself time to batch create. But I've just been really inspired and really on it recently. So I think I might go back to once a week, because this podcast really, truly does let me up. I have some really exciting guests coming on soon. I'm recording one of them this coming week, and I'm so, so excited. I will announce that. You'll hear about it when it's closer to the time. Actually, I could probably just tell you, Eden Carpenter is coming on the podcast, and I'm so excited. She has just had been such an expander for me as an undefined G center within this human design space, as an entrepreneur who has an incredibly successful business. So I'm interviewing her next Tuesday. The episode probably won't come out until maybe October or so, but that is there. And I'm really, really excited. And the membership, the Human Design Holistic Healing membership, is also available. The link is in the show notes below. It is really just like a space that I wanted to create as a manifesting generator. I have so many passions. I mean, they're all like come down to this one purpose that I have, right? It's just to help people align with their mind, emotions, and their body. So it's getting your physical body where it needs to be, starting that journey of connecting with your physical body through food, through nutrition, but it's so much more than that too. It's getting your emotions regulated. It's mental, it's getting your mind under control. It's just like, it's kind of like that chicken and the egg situation, right? So it's like, it's getting all of that together, but my passions are human design and holistic healing. And as it relates to holistic healing, it's like, so it's a matter of, we also, we look at your physical health, we look at what you're putting into your body, but it's so much more than that, right? Because if your career, if your relationship, if your finances, if your spirituality, if you're not moving, if any of these things are unbalanced, it doesn't matter what you put in your body, because your body will literally only stress or digest. And so when we're not in alignment, when we're not balanced in those areas, you could eat the most perfect diet and your body is not going to do its thing. So it's like, if our body is beautiful and it knows exactly what to do with exactly what it's given. So it's a matter of giving it the right tools and giving it the right things for it to do exactly what it's supposed to do. And so it's really just everything I'm passionate about, everything I've learned is funneled into this membership. And it's so much more than that too, because for me, I found one of the biggest things in my journey has been in community. And so I wanted to create a space for people to lift each other up, for people to support each other, for people to connect and communicate and hold each other accountable. And so that is really my goal with this. It's like to have all this knowledge, but I want the real healing to be from the community space, from the members, because that is so expansive in itself. That is so incredible to have people, because a lot of times in this journey, we feel really alone. We feel really isolated. And so meeting people and having that connection with people who are where you are or were where you are is so, so, so helpful just in easing some of that loneliness and isolation that comes with this. And so that's my purpose for the membership. If you're interested, the link is down in the bio. I also have a free gut health challenge. It's literally 7 days of tips, tricks, and tools, tips, and tricks to get your gut, to jumpstart your gut, right? To just start getting that gut health going so that we can learn to regulate our emotions and everything that is connected with our gut health. So all of that information is down in the show notes. I thank you so much for listening. If you feel called to rate, review, subscribe, share with a friend, tag me on Instagram. Let me know what you thought about this episode, anything. If you have any questions, email me. I would be more than happy to answer it on the podcast. I would love to do a Q&A session too. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week.